Essa continues his conversation with political analyst Essa Njie.
Now, one major highlight in this report is TALIB Bensouda's support is clearly rising, especially among young voters. Now, do you think he has a real chance of winning in December? And how could that change the election?
Well, of course, Mr. Bensouda's popularity has increased over the past months. As someone who just came into the political arena in less than 1 year, having 19% of approval rate or intention to vote for is a significant number. And I think he is someone who stands chances of securing both from the incumbent and, of course, some opposition figures, right? Opposition parties. But winning the December election, I think, depends on a lot of other factors. Going in solo or going with smaller parties in a coalition, as they are having right now, Coalition 2026, I think will kind of limit the chances. It's going to make it more difficult. It requires a lot of work to be done to be able to, secure that 17% and add it to the 19%. To be able to win elections. The 17% plus the 19%, the 17% undecided voters, if you are able to get that, that's a good sign. But also we have to understand that these are surveys. They do not necessarily reflect, or absolutely, let me put it that way, they do not always and absolutely reflect what is on the ground. Sometimes, surveys can fail the predictions, but sometimes they work as well, and in many instances they work, right? Especially in the context of the Gambia, if you look at recent surveys. But Mr. Bensouda's chances of winning, as I said, depends on a lot of factors. It depends on which opposition party is able to come into coalition with. It also depends on how the approval rate of the incumbent is, can go down in the next few months, let's say in 2 months' time or 3. Before the election. But going alone, for example, especially with weaker opposition parties in a coalition, will definitely make it difficult. Remember, as I said, advantage of incumbency. People might appreciate a certain political figure, but because the incumbent always has advantage in terms of access to resources and a lot of other issues or factors, Mr. Bensouda might find it difficult. And of course, as I said in my previous interviews on conversations on other media platforms, Mr. Bensouda has something that a lot of this new generation of politicians, the young ones, do not have. That is his political exposure and experience. But of course, he has a lot of work to do in order to be able to win these December elections, especially if he should go with weaker opposition parties in a coalition. He definitely needs formidable and strong opposition parties on his side in a coalition to be able to defeat the incumbent. But that's not an easy job to do.
Also, Darboe's candidacy continues to generate both significant support and significant resistance. Yes accounts for 46% and no 45%. Now, where does this place Darboe and the UDP ahead of the December election?
Well, the UDP's support base, if you go by the 2021 presidential elections, rather, Mr. Darboe and the UDP were able to secure something around 27% of the vote. And now approval rate or intention to vote for is around 25 to 26%. That shows that the support base kind of remains intact, even though Mr. Bensouda, someone who came from the UDP, might be able to take care from here and there. But the UDP support base remains largely intact. Based on these figures. But I think for Mr. Darboe and the UDP to be able to win election, they will definitely have to go beyond the base of the party. You need outside voters as well. External votes are needed to be able to reinforce their political position and be able to upset the incumbent. But only relying on that, on the support base of the party, the 26% to 25, 26, 27%, will not win them elections, because I want to believe, and going by current realities and indicators, the election might not necessarily have multiple contestants. Therefore, the candidates on the ballot might be limited, and anyone who is able to secure, between 32 to 35% or 36% of the votes might be able to win elections. So it depends on the number of candidates that are on the ballot. But I think for the UDP to be able to win election and Mr. DARBOE to be president, they need to really go beyond the base of the party and be able to attract votes from outside as well.
The survey also indicates that the country is divided by region. Barrow leads in Basse, DARBOE leads in Kerawan, Mansakonko, Bensouda leads in Brikama, and kind of thing. With no candidate leading everywhere, which regions do you think will decide the election?
Well, clearly, Mr. Barrow leading in Basse and, of course, parts of CRR or largely CRR is not something that is surprising. That is expected. And, of course, we expect this in the December elections as well. And, of course, Mr. DARBOE also in Kerawan and Mansakonko, especially Mansakonko, has been UDP's strong base. But if you look at them, leading in those areas is not necessarily with a significant or huge margin compared to how Mr. Barrow leads in Basse and CRR, parts of CRR, one can say. So clearly it shows that regionally, candidates might have their strong positions, but also what is important here is nationally what you're able to accumulate at the end of the day. Well, Brikama, of course, and KM, these are the largest. West Coast region is the largest, voter region, and of course, followed by KM. So Mr. Bensouda leading in those areas also shows growing support among the voters in those regions. Of course, Combo, West Coast, and KM largely determine Gambians' elections, right? And I don't think it is going to be any time different this time around as well. But having the survey indicating support base increase for Mr. Bensouda and in both KM and West Coast is not something that the opposition or the incumbent should dismiss, especially if you look at KM, for example. That's where Mr. Bensouda is from. That's where he is serving as a mayor, and he was able to win 2 elections in the area. So it's not a surprise that he has that support base there. And of course, West Coast being the powerhouse, the battleground for a lot of these parties in the elections, is something that the incumbent will have to look into properly. And of course, the other opposition, that is the UDP. Clearly, West Coast might determine his election, but also you have to understand one thing. The incumbent has other areas, like Basse, for example, which also has a huge voter population in URR. The incumbent seems to have a grip over that area, and also if you look at CRR as well. So NBR is something that Mr. Barrow is able to, and the NPP were able to penetrate of recent, and that's why they're able to even have a chairman there in North Bank region, that is the Kerawan administrative area, or Kerawan area council. They have it in Basse as well. So NPP, even if you look at the last parliamentary election, they were able to secure a lot of seats in rural Gambia. So the NPP seems to have control over rural politics. Or rural votes. They're able to attract a lot of votes from rural areas. And now the contest is usually in the Combo area, in West Coast region, and KM to be specific. So that is going to be the battleground. KM and West Coast are going to be the battlegrounds that both the incumbent and the opposition will want to fight for to be able to win in December.
According to the report, coalition politics is likely to remain prominent ahead of the nominations in October and campaign in November. Now, can a unified opposition defeat Barrow in December? And do you see it happening?
So I've always said that this December election, we will see fragmented alliances and coalitions, even among the opposition camp, because of the lack of trust and disunity. But I believe that strongly if they're able to bring a united opposition force against the incumbent, which will be difficult though, I think they will be able to defeat Mr. Barrow. But without that, there is also another option. If you're able to have the UDP and other opposition parties on one side, and of course, a third force on the other side against the incumbent, I think that is going to open the race. And Mr. Barrow or any of the other opposition candidates, depending on who they are, will be able, may just emerge victorious. But remember, our elections is also simple majority. Even if Mr. Barrow is able to lead by 1% or 1 vote, of course, is still going to be president. And each of these leaders too, whether it's Mr. Bensouda or whether it's Mr. DARBOE, if they're able to lead with even one vote, they will still win elections. So it's winner take all. I think a three-way race with Mr. Barrow, for example, Mr. DARBOE and Mr. Bensouda, which seems to be the scenario right now. It seems we will. That's what we have right now, unless we have, unless the dynamics change and we're able to have other candidates adding. But right now, these three are the leading contenders for the elections in December. And if the third force, which is the United and others, are able to have a formidable one, strong opposition on their side, and the UDP also able to have some opposition parties on their side, I think that will open the race that any of the candidates could win the elections because it's simple majority.
Finally, 17% don't know who to vote for, and that's a lot. What do you think will make these undecided voters choose in December?
Well, 17% saying that they do not know who to vote for is a huge number. And I think rightly, we've been having this in Gambian election, the undecided voters. And mostly sometimes it's out of, people that are kind of disillusioned with politics, and they not necessarily interested in elections at a particular point in time. They're frustrated either because of the disunity and lack of trust within the opposition camp, or because of the terrible performance of the incumbent. So they get disillusioned with politics. They decide that they are not going to vote in elections, or some of them will say they are not decided yet, they just want to be presented with something else. And sometimes also the other reason is because these people are not presented with the option that they want, right? And as a result, they are not decided to vote. But I think also there is an opportunity for each of the parties that are coming into this election to be able to go after these 17% of undecided voters to see how they're able to get them on their side. Because remember, as I said, it is simple majority. You cannot underestimate even a single vote in the election. So the 17% is a huge number. It's probably because people do not necessarily have the right options that they are looking for, or they've not heard the message that they want to hear, and it's up for grab by each of the parties in this election.
And that brings us to the end